So, Teddy K sounded off on the Bengals rushing offense. Yeah, kinda not really. Well, he talked about it. I wouldn't say he sounded off. Sounded off means he's like, this is unacceptable, this is not right, this is trash canish football, we are the worst in the league. No, that's like sounding off. He spoke about it because he was asked about it. Now, clearly this year offensive line has not been great, right? Mainly in the passing game, pass blocking game, offensive line's been a problem. Run blocking game, usually not that much. Now, Texans game is the worst we have done all year long in the run blocking game. But other than that, we have been pretty much about average. Nothing special, nothing crazy good, just about average. So it's not really surprising that, again, you look at this, and it isn't all the offensive line that's the fault, okay? Especially in the run blocking game. In the pass blocking game, you can make the argument it's play calling and it's offensive line play. But in the run blocking game, it is not all offensive line play. In the run blocking game, and when it comes, well, not run blocking game, but in the run game in general, a lot of it is bad play calls in bad situations. Running the ball when they stack the box. Trying to run the ball in situations that you probably should pass the ball. Pass the ball in situations you probably should run the ball. It has been the problem the whole entire year. We have been very, not smart with situational football. And it doesn't really matter, if you have the best run blocking game possible. If you're running the ball when you should be throwing the ball and vice versa, it's not going to work. I mean, if they're coming out in goal line defense, and pretty much not goal line, but 4-4 defense, and you start running the ball every single play, you're going to get shut down. But if they're coming out and, and you start passing the ball, you might get some passes down the field. You might be able to get some completions. It's like the concept of passing the ball when they're coming out in quarters. They're coming out in quarters defense, which means more defensive backs on the field. You run the ball, you're probably going to get 7, 8, 9 yards. So it's really situational football, I think, is the problem with our run game this year. And we kind of go toward the run game. It doesn't work at first. It works a little bit, and then we get away from the run game the whole entire game, and then we come back to it. So even the situations where we do run the ball a lot, or we do, actually utilize the run, we utilize it in such small bits that you really can't even blame the offensive line. You got to blame literally Zach Taylor for that concept. Because we run the ball, but then we get away from it, and then we come back, and it might not work on one play, and be like, all right, well, we tried. We tried running the ball, boys. We tried running the ball. Here's what he had to say, by the way, Teddy K. He said, I think that's kind of been our problem this year. Said in an interview with Jay Morrison of The Athletics. And he was responding to, he knows you're not going to reach the pinnacle of success without a viable running game. And yeah, he said that's kind of been our problem all year, is that we can't run the football. But again, I disagree with that because we haven't tried. Like, I don't think you could say, like, oh, we haven't, been able to run the football because we haven't really tried. We've been very much throwing the football all year long. If we look at his stats for this year, I mean, against Steelers, 8 rushing attempts. Ravens, 16. 11, 14, 16, 12. The last time we had a game where he had over 20 rushing attempts was against the Cardinals in week 6? No, week 5. Week 5 versus the Cardinals is the last time we had Joe Mixon have over 20 rushing attempts. And other than that, 14, 19, 13, 13. How can you tell me that, this is a problem? The problem is not us rushing or being able to run the football. The problem is us calling run plays or not, and we don't call them. We become one-dimensional in these games, and we just go with that mentality of that's acceptable, that's okay. We'll become one-dimensional. Instead of trying the run game and popping it off, and then we do run the ball against stacked boxes, and we wonder why it doesn't work. And then it doesn't work one time, and then that's like an excuse of, don't run the ball again because it didn't work that one time. Yeah, it didn't work that one time in the third quarter. You just don't not run the ball again in the third quarter because of that? Oh, man. So Zach Taylor responded. Obviously, goes into Zach Taylor response now. He said, obviously, we have been very, actually, what did Zach Taylor? Was this all? I thought I saw Taylor at one point. Taylor talked down here. He said, obviously, we have very much underachieved in the run game. I think when you have a new quarterback come in, you want to be able to lean on the run. And we're still not able to today. We still have had a chance, but ultimately failed. See, I still don't agree with that. And I love Teddy K, but I don't agree with that. Because we wouldn't run the ball with Joe Burrow in there. It's not that we couldn't, okay? Couldn't and wouldn't are not the same words, okay? They're completely opposite words here. Wouldn't means we refused to. Couldn't means we had the lack of ability to. There's a difference there. You can't tell me we weren't able to run the ball, and now that a new quarterback's coming in, we can't run the ball still. No. There was 40 offensive plays, Teddy. 40. Okay? We could have ran the ball. We could have, obviously. Now, did they stack the box and say, hey, listen, we're going to stack the box and shut down Joe Mixon, and you had to beat us with Jake Browning? Absolutely. We did. That's kind of the mentality. But then you can look at the Ravens game. Like, you can look at all of these games. And to say, like, okay, well, maybe with Jake Browning in the last two affairs, then what you're saying is a very factual statement, and that's true. But what about you said the whole entire year. The whole year we had Joe Burrow in there. Our problem wasn't we couldn't run the ball. Our problem is we didn't run the ball. I think there's a big difference there. Going down to Zach Taylor, he said, we got to do a better job managing drives as we go and put ourselves in a little bit better advantageous situations. If you can put yourself in a situation where you can call more runs and you're not at 2nd and 10, 2nd and long, 3rd and longer, you get more runs off. Eventually, some of these runs start to get you bigger gains. We didn't get an opportunity to get enough runs off. Here's why I sigh. Whose fault is that, Jack? Whose fault is that? I know you're going to say players. Execution. All the players need to execute better. They're not playing good. They're not doing things good. If that's your excuse, you're never going to win. You're never going to get better. You're never going to fix anything. Because, well, I will agree, to a certain degree, you can put blame on the players, obviously. It's also coaching. It's also play calling. And if he's saying, well, I am taking responsibility here because I'm saying, we put ourselves in a situation and a lot of it, and some of it is play calling, then you got to tell me how you're fixing it, right? Because you can't say that same message, and I've heard this same message, I feel like, this whole entire year. So how are you growing and elevating up? Because there's games we have seen versus the Cardinals where you looked like, wow, you're getting better at play calling. The play calling is great. We have great things happening. Everything is going good. And then we see games the next week, literally the following week versus Seahawks, and we can't move the ball in the second half. So is it a problem with player execution or is it a problem with play calling? Because at some point, you got to figure out what the problem is and ice that in the butt, right? Especially if you want to go win a Super Bowl. You can't be like, well, it's a player execution problem, and not say, well, it's an everyone problem. We're going to break it down, see what the problem is, and figure this out. Because all I've seen all year is you point fingers at the players, and nothing has changed. So, if it is a player problem, who are the players that are doing bad? Tyler Boyd? Joe Burrow? I mean, come on now. At some point, you got to sit there and say, okay, is a little bit of a player problem, maybe execution, but it's also a Zach Taylor problem. And you know how coaches fix that? They got to call better plays. They got to scheme people open. There's things you can do as a coach. Bill Belichick, I know right now he's not in the most greatest news ever, but he has said a million times, players win games, coaches lose them. When coaches start pointing fingers at players, things don't work out right. Next thing he said, by the way, that has to change in Week 13 versus Jacksonville Jaguars on Monday Night Football. Teddy K said, "You never know who you are in the NFL. You're judged in 17 days, and it comes ready to perform on Sunday. It comes who's ready to perform on Sunday or Monday night in this case." Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. That is very true. Every game, the NFL is a game-by-game basics. That's really what this comes down to. You know, again, he is correct. You are judged by every single game you play, and you're only as good as your last win. That's pretty much how the NFL works. Skipping forward a little bit here, he talked about the danger of missing the playoffs for the first time in 3 years. Maybe it's time for a change. He said, "You'll see it all around the league," he pointed out. "You saw it on Thanksgiving. You see it every week, week in and week out. This is a league of highly trained professionals and amazing athletes. So you got to be at your best when it counts the most. When it counts the most for us is game day." Okay, didn't really answer the question. Should we expect a little bit more emphasis on the run Monday night versus Jacksonville? "We're going to get to work. I know they have a good plan for us," Ted said, "but it comes down to individual execution, each player winning the matchup." Okay, that was a great PR response, Teddy. I love you, man. That was a great PR response. No, I'm not expecting any run. Well, I am expecting a low run because we have a backup quarterback in there, but I'm not expecting much because, again, this offense is, and it's amazing to say this, has been this whole entire year, 80% pass, 20% run. And out of those 80% pass, it's 79.9% screens. 79.9% screen passes or checkdowns out of the backfield. Man, yeah. Like I said, I love Teddy K, man. I do love him. And I do love Zach Taylor. And I'll sit here right now and say, I do not believe Zach Taylor should be fired. I don't believe he should be fired. I love Zach Taylor. I love, Joe Burrow. I love all these guys. I will say, if I'm being honest right now, Frank Pollock deserves to be fired. The only player on this staff who deserves to be fired is Frank Pollock. But I will also be honest, because I haven't clarified this in my videos. I want to clarify it now. The Cincinnati Bengals do not fire coaches. They don't. Look at their history. They don't fire coaches. They're not a team that gets scared that, something goes wrong, things are going wrong, and then they bail on somebody. They didn't fire Marvin Lewis for the longest time. They're not a team that bails on coaches. And you got to give them respect for that. They're very commendable for that. And I don't mention in my videos because I think everyone watching my videos who are Bengals fans, you already know that. I mean, that's very obvious, but I do get some new viewers who are like, "Hey, the Bengals never fire coaches." Like, yeah, but that's obvious. See, sometimes I don't say some things in my videos that is just obvious stuff, like Bengals don't fire coaches, right? But, so I get some newer viewers and they kind of forget that, okay. But yeah, so they don't fire coaches. So none of these coaches will be fired. Frank Pollock is the only guy who potentially could be fired, and even then, I don't think he's going to get fired. I think he deserves to be. I think he's a poor offensive line coach, but that's beside the point. We'll find out what happens on Monday Night Football. We are currently sitting at plus 7.5 points going into this game. It's going to be a long game, boys. See you guys next one. Peace.